People heard me. How's everybody doing today? Fabulous. Wonderful. I got a thumbs up even. Love that. Thank you, John. My name is Joshua Ness. I am a senior manager with Verizon 5G Labs. That's the last time I'm going to read to you what's on the slide. I am from New York City. Anybody from New York? Anybody been to New York? Yeah, there we go. I'm super happy to be here. Thank you to Ariana and Runke for putting all of this together and the whole team behind it. I think it's pretty good. I won't make everyone give them a round of applause, but please consider saying hello to them tonight. I know we're had some really great content, and so I'm the only thing standing in between you and another cup of coffee. So I'm gonna burn through a few of the things that you can come talk to me about afterward, and then there also is a follow-up to this session later today around 2:30 downstairs in the Mendocino room. So yeah, we'll see what we can get through. What the heck is 5G? Anybody know? They think they know? We're going to go over some other technologies and what people think they know about them later. 5G is the next generation of wireless connectivity, the fifth generation of wireless connectivity. Started off with the Zach Morris brick phone. Anyone know why it's called the Zach Morris brick phone? Yes, you do. I'm one of my Saved by the Bell fans over there. Started off with just being able to make an analog phone call, then moved into texting. That was your Razor, right? Then into the beginnings of data, and that was BlackBerry. Palm a little bit, but you still had to dock the Palm. It didn't do over-the-air syncing of email and calendar, and that's where BlackBerry really made their mark, is because you could do that. Anybody have a BlackBerry back in the day? Yeah, we did. Oh man, that little clicky wheel on the side, loved it. Then 4G is what most of us are familiar with right now. Even if you have a 5G phone, most of the functionality, I would dare say all of the functionality that you use that device for could be done on 4G, hence the problem, right? So 5G now is a step above. If each of these, if 1 through 4 is adding wings and floors onto a house, 5G is bulldozing the house to the ground and rebuilding the house entirely. It has a lot of benefits that are going to come along with it that we're going to talk about today, a lot of which are important for some of the work that we're doing in smart manufacturing. So in 2007, Steve Jobs held up this device and he said it's a whole new thing. It was a web browser, a music player, and a phone all in one. It was this overkill kind of a device, right? It was super powerful, and we used it to do really, really important work, like play words with friends, for about 4 years. Yeah. In 2010, Words with Friends was about the most advanced connected application that the iPhone had. You can think of any others, maybe things like Angry Birds or lightsaber apps. Those are kind of cool, but they're not connected, right? You can play those in airplane mode. You can do all those. This was cool. You could be playing Scrabble with somebody who lived in Tennessee or Turkey all at the same time, and that had never been done before. Now we know that 4G has given us everything that we have today: rich communication, if we can ever get Apple on board. The gig economy. We've created entire industries that are built on top of 4G. When the gig economy was first getting started, Uber drivers and Lyft drivers, they were issued devices, mobile phones, because they had persistent connectivity and they could help them do their job, right? So enter 5G. I mentioned how it's a rebuilding. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this. If anybody wants to know the intricacies of radio frequencies and things like that, come talk to me. But it is a whole different infrastructure of cells and radio waves that we're putting together. Even just today, there was an announcement that came out that Verizon is moving commercial traffic onto its standalone core, which is a very big deal for those of us in the 5G industry. So it has a lot of these capabilities that come along with it. Many of them are going to be valuable for consumers in industries like sports and entertainment, things like XR and immersive technologies like VR and AR. Many of those will be important for smart manufacturing as well. I don't like this graphic because I think it's diminutive. Because how many of us download movies to our phone anymore? Not really, right? We're a connected society. Usually there's always some joker in the back who's like, I download movies to my phone. And I'm like, when? And they go, when I'm getting on an airplane. Exactly, when you're going to have no connectivity whatsoever, right? So that's the only time that we really do that. Now, the capabilities of 5G are much more are going to be much more pronounced than this, and we're on our way there. It comes in a couple of different flavors. Not going to spend a ton of time on this, but this is what most of us here in this room are going to be worried about, right? Not worried, but concerned with. Not concerned, but like taking advantage of, right? Fixed wireless access. We can beam 5G into homes and businesses, sometimes even just through the window, right? So we can create 5G powered networks where there used to be none, where there used to be no connectivity. And we're starting to do that even in rural environments now with something called integrated access backhaul, right? And if we want to know more about that, we can talk about that later. So our goal, of course, is to drive the fourth industrial revolution. That's why we're all here. Is anybody here not interested in driving the fourth industrial revolution? No, of course not, right? And we know that 5G and connectivity, connected devices are going to be one of the things that gets us there, both in terms of how we process those raw materials and how we push those out to our customers. And it's lots and lots of capabilities that we've already talked about. I know there's a lot going on in this slide. Most of them don't have a ton of text on them. And like it was said before, I'll make these available to everybody who's here. Now we're getting into the interesting thing. So 5G, if we're thinking about all of the new technologies that are going to be important for the work that we do moving into the future, there has to be this infrastructure layer, right? We're going to talk quite a bit about why infrastructure is so important. And it starts with connectivity. It starts with laying the groundwork for devices to be able to talk to each other and do the things that they need to do. On top of that, has to live compute. There has to be some sort of a compute layer for the logic layer to sit on top of. When I say the logic layer, I mean things like artificial intelligence, things that turn data into information, because data alone doesn't help you make any decisions. It has to be contextual, right? And so there has to be some sort of a logic layer that sits on top of the compute layer so that the actual devices that are taking advantage of that logic can run the applications, right? And so we have connectivity, compute, logic, devices, and then the application of the technology that we're looking at, okay? And this is true, this is pretty much standard across any industry. These things have to be in place for us to move forward. Edge computing is not new. Edge computing is the idea that we can take the far cloud and we can bring it close. Everyone thinks they know what cloud means. Most people don't really have a way to contextualize that. When you pull out your phone and you pull up Instagram, those photos aren't on your phone. They're in a cloud somewhere. They're on a server that could be located potentially hundreds or thousands of miles away, okay? And when you're using Instagram, that's fine. You can buffer for a second. When you pull up Netflix, those movies aren't on your phone unless you download them. You're streaming those, right? They're on a server hundreds or potentially thousands of miles away, and we're okay with a little bit of buffering. And so now when we start talking about massive machine type communication or device to device communication, things like autonomous driving vehicles having to communicate with each other and with the smart ecosystem around them, we're okay with a few seconds of buffering in that case, aren't we? No, of course not. Of course not. So the information or the data has to be able to be transferred, computed, turned into contextual information, and then sent back to the people that need to take action on it immediately. And the distance that it has to travel is important. The speed of light is only so fast. And so if we can take those resources and bring them closer to where those decisions need to be made, we can save lots and lots of time. And when I say lots and lots of time, I mean milliseconds. Because in a lot of situations, including a lot of the work that you're doing, milliseconds matter. And if they don't, they will. So 5G enables that data to move around fast enough so that edge computing applications can sometimes outperform on device, on-prem compute capabilities. And that's, if you think about that, I'll let that sit with you for a second. That sounds crazy. The fact that we can take information, offload it, and then bring it back is in some cases faster than if we just did it all on the device itself. It also means it brings down costs for you and your equipment and your customers' equipment. Quick diagram of what computing at the edge compared to computing in the cloud looks like. You can see over here, one of the benefits is also security, because if the information never has to go out into the open internet, it can stay within the network, which means that any malicious actors would have to actually penetrate the network itself to get access to that information. It's very difficult to do. Okay. I have a couple of slides that are pretty much just spelling it out. Okay. This is one of them. These types of things, these technologies that we're talking about are absolutely foundational for what it is we're trying to do in this room today. And it really comes down to real-time automation at scale. So we all have many different things that we're looking at in our factories right now, in our processes. And these technologies that we're talking about are going to end up impacting all of them across supply chains, warehouse management, as well as in the smart manufacturing processes themselves. And I have a couple of interesting examples like this one that talk about the types of outcomes that we want to achieve and how 5G and edge computing can begin to enable those types of outcomes. Like I said, some of these have quite a bit of text on them. I'll make these available, or you can take a picture of it now, but I'm going to kind of burn through them. We can go into more detail later this afternoon, right? So we talked about infrastructure. Now, it's not just me up here talking about how these things are required, how the capabilities, the real-time contextual capabilities are a requirement. There are the industry associations that are talking about what the requirements actually are going to be to enable these types of use cases. And if we don't have the infrastructure in place in the next 5 years, we already talked about how a lot of the rest of the world is outpacing us when it comes to the application of some of these technologies, of the manufacturing processes and capabilities. And over the course of the next 5 years, as more of these edge-enabled resources come online and become available, if the infrastructure is not in place, remember we talked about at the very bottom, the connectivity is table stakes, has to be there. We're going to have a hard time. So, like I said, we're, as a company, and you'll notice I haven't really talked about Verizon that much. That's because it's boring. 5G as alone, like I said, all it is just a base layer that enables all of this other stuff to happen. We have an entire giant website that people have spent millions of dollars and hours looking at. If you want to hear about Verizon, go look at the website. I'm talking about the technology. I'm talking about the stuff that is possible. I'm talking about what the capabilities are that we need to be thinking about here in this room. A lot of these we can help. I actually have a colleague in the back as well. And we're happy to talk to you about some of this stuff. But all of these things are familiar to you. I know that they are. And all of these things are poised to be improved on. They are ready to be scaled up and to take advantage of these things like mixed reality. Your workers, the workers in the factory, if they're not already, will begin using extended reality, virtual reality, augmented reality, sometimes on site for things like worker training and safety, sometimes off site. Imagine a forklift that doesn't need a driver, somebody who can be sitting on their couch, operating it from a different state using a VR headset. What does that mean for factory operations? What does that mean for safety? What does that mean for things like downtime? Quality assurance, another one. Now, I promised we were going to talk about some new technologies and about what some of us think some of these new technologies are. I get these questions a lot. So, of course, having a little fun with it. But most people don't have a solid understanding of what these are, what they're actually, what they are and what they can do. So I know in the program it talks a little bit about how Web3 and decentralization are going to have an impact on smart manufacturing. The truth is that's a little ways out. What I want to do is get us to a point where we can start seeing how we're going to benefit from those in the future. If you're not thinking right now about how to implement blockchain technology on factory floor, you're fine. You're doing great. That's not even necessarily what we're focused on. We have some teams that are looking into these sorts of things, but that's not where we're at yet. But we will be. Right now, as an industry, as a group like Verizon that specializes in connectivity and in those infrastructure, it really does come down to bringing that managed edge and cloud to you and providing that connectivity infrastructure so that we can begin layering in some of these new things on top of it, right? So this is just a quick example of what Web3 is. If you're not familiar, Web 1 is the old Yahoo days, right? Where you go to yahoo.com and you read the news and then you turn off your compact and you go about your day. Web 2 is where we're at now. It is an interactional experience. You can supply information to the internet. You can interact with people and machines on the internet. Web 3 says the internet exists everywhere. The data can exist and should exist everywhere. And we can begin using some of these decentralized and immutable concepts to make sure that we're able to execute new transactions and that those transactions are faithful, right? If you have other questions about Web3 and things like that, we can talk about that at the session later today. You've heard of predictive maintenance, right? Thank you, sir. Sounds good. We really do see that as kind of the gateway into what the smart factory floor is going to look like in the future. And the reason for that is when we start looking at OEE, it's not ever real. A low EEE is not really ever an issue of a huge issue of quality. The machines that you have on the floor are essentially doing their job. And it's not even really a measure of performance because the workers that you have are operating those machines as efficiently as possible. And if you have an issue with quality, you need to go back to the people who set up the machine in the first place. You need to talk to who is ever supplying you those raw materials. If you have an issue of performance, it's a matter of how do we train the workers better? How do we make sure that their safety is taken care of? How do we make sure that they are able to most efficiently operate those machines and do their jobs on the floor? And there's a lot of those technologies like extended reality will help them to do that both on the training and in practice. It really comes down to availability. Availability is the biggest factor in a low OEE score. Now, John, were you talking about like the economy and inflation and things like that? Anybody see the inflation numbers that came out today? Yeah, how's your portfolio doing? Good, hope so. Yeah. Anybody here's costs going down? I see Ariana stretching back there. I was like, really? Nobody's costs are going down. Your labor costs are going up. Your raw materials costs are going up. How are you going to recognize any sort of gains? Efficiencies. Your efficiencies must increase. And that comes down to the availability. That comes down to the scheduled downtime and oh my gosh, the unscheduled downtime, which can be killers of your overall equipment efficiency. Just spelling it out here. These are the things that keep your supervisors, your IT and your OT managers both up at night. This right here. And because your costs are not going to go down anytime soon, your efficiencies must go up. Predictive maintenance is a fantastic way to start that journey. That requires connectivity, intelligence, and industrial IoT. Anybody not familiar with industrial IoT? The idea that machines talk to each other. The idea that machines can talk to a unified namespace or a digital twin of all of your different operations, from your ERP to your human machine interaction capabilities, all the way down to your warehousing, your shipping, and your invoicing. All of that can exist in a virtual space where you can test out new concepts. You can see what impact new ideas and new practices are going to have. You can even make changes to these critical systems because they're not having necessarily direct links to each other, and you have to reset all of those different ERP connections. If you can have the data coming into that unified namespace, into that digital twin environment, then you can begin rapidly contextualizing that information and using it to make the decisions that your IT and your OT managers need to make. So as an organization, we're getting to the end here. As an organization, here's my sales pitch. We're working on all of this stuff. We work with ecosystems. Brett mentioned ecosystems. We're working with systems integrators. We're working with those hyperscalers, the IBMs and the Microsofts of the world. We're working with startups and other independent software vendors. Do you know who knows everything about everything? Nobody, right? Even as Verizon, we focus on connectivity and compute. I don't know. I'm not an expert in robotics. We have some teams that are, but we work with organizations that are the experts in those space, figure out how to work with them to integrate their technology into these infrastructure elements that I've just talked about are going to be so crucial, so that we can bring to you some of our solutions, but also some solutions that we've determined are really good, best-in-class solutions in the marketplace. And it's not, like I mentioned, it's not just on the factory floor, it's in warehousing, it's in shipping, it's in all of these things. And we do want to bring those ecosystems together. And we have partner programs to test out new ideas. We're constantly looking for new use cases because we've seen a lot of stuff. We haven't seen everything. We want to make sure that we're working with our customers, our enterprise customers, in the best way possible to make sure that we can develop custom solutions, network as a service for you. We have that capability. And so my colleague in the back and I would love to have a conversation with you about that later today. I'll be in Mendocino on the second floor around 2:30. I think it'll be more of, I have a couple of extra slides and information and things like that we can go through, but happy to just have more of a casual conversation with you, two-way conversation at that time. So thank you very much for hanging out with me today. I'll be here the rest of today and tomorrow, and looking forward to talking to you.